Today we are going to study about the sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is a mode of reproduction which involves formation of the male gamete and the female gamete, and these gametes can be produced by the different individuals or by the same individual, and it includes the fusion of these gametes for the formation of the zygote, which further led to the formation of a new organism. Now on this basis there are two type of the individuals: bisexual individuals and the unisexual individuals. In bisexual individual, the male and the female gametes, they are produced by the single body or the single individual. Example is earthworm, and these individuals are also known as hermaphrodites. So these individuals are also known as hermaphrodites in case of animals. Now the second category is unisexual or the heterosexual. These are the type of the organisms where the male and the female gamete are produced within the same body. For example, human. The next topic is sexual reproduction in diverse organisms. So first take example of the plants. In case of the plants, the very first thing that we need to understand is about vegetative phase. Vegetative phase is the period of growth between the seed germination up to the initiation of the flowering. So in previous lecture we have studied about different phases like juvenile phase, reproductive phase, and in case of the plants, the vegetative phase is the period of the growth between seed germination, when the seed is germinating, up to the initiation of the flowering. And this vegetative phase start immediately after the seed germination. The young seedlings grow and develop the new plant. Now on this basis there are three type of the plants: annual plants, biennial plants, and the perennial plants. Annual plants are those plants which start flowering at the end of the season, for example pea, wheat, while as the biennial plants produce flowers in the second year of the growth, like the carrot, parsley, allium, etc. The most common thing between these two types of the plants is that they die after the flowering. Their lifespan stop after the production of the flowers. And in these plants, there is clear cut vegetative phase, reproductive phase, and the senescent phase, because they die after flowering. While the third category, which is known as the perennial plants, the duration of the vegetative phase varies from few years to the several years. They have a very long lifespan, and these are known as perennial plants. And such plants can flower multiple times in their lifetime. The best example are the plants like mango, guava, etc. And there's exception also, like the bamboo species flower only once in their lifetime. And another strange example is a plant Strobilanthus kunthiana, and it flowers only once in 12 years. So these were the three category of the plants: annual plants, biennial plants, and the perennial plants. Now let's talk about the animals. In case of the animals, the sexual reproduction begins with the marked changes in the external as well as the internal morphology and physiology. So in class 10th you have studied about the puberty stage, and all these changes are regulated by the hormones and the enzymes. The two main things or two main words that we need to understand is menstrual cycle and the estrous cycle. Menstrual cycle is the period of the cyclic changes that takes place in the females of primates, which is an order of monkeys, apes, and the humans. And the second is estrous cycle, which is a cyclic event of sexual reproduction in females of non-primates, like the monkeys. Sorry, not monkeys. Monkeys belong to primates, like dog, cat, sheep, rats, deers, dogs, and tigers. Now, the main difference between the menstrual cycle and the estrous cycle is that In case of the menstrual cycle, it involves the bleeding phase, while as the estrous cycle do not involve any bleeding phase. The menstrual cycle is a regular period of the event that takes place after a specific period of time or specific days, while the estrous cycle only takes place during the breeding season of these animals. Now, after the introductory review of sexual reproduction, the next topic is events that takes place during the sexual reproduction. So sexual reproduction mainly involves three phases: the pre-fertilization events, the fertilization events, and the post-fertilization events. First of all, let's discuss about pre-fertilization events. Means all the events that takes place prior to the fusion of the gametes. So it mainly includes two sub events, you can say: gametogenesis, and second is the gamete transfer. The first, gametogenesis, refers to the process of formation of two type of the gametes, male and the female gametes. And gametes are haploid cells because they are formed by the meiotic cell division. And now let's talk about the types. The very first type of the gametogenesis is formation of different type of the gametes or similar type of the gametes. The first category is isogamete. Iso means similar. So in isogametes, the both type of the gametes formed, male and female gametes, they are similar in their morphology, and these isogamete formation can easily be observed in the lower fungi like the fungi and the algae, and the example is Cladophora. The second type of the gamete is heterogametes. Hetero means different, and heterogamety can also be observed in the algae. And the example that we have considered here is Fucus and alga. Here is a female gamete, and here is a male gamete. So you can see the difference in their morphology. There's a large female gamete and a small male gamete. And in case of these animal, in case of these alga, these different type of two different morphologically different gametes are produced. And heterogamety can also be observed in humans. There is a production of a large sized non-motile female gamete called as egg, and a motile male gamete called as sperm, which is very microscopic in structure. So this is called as gametogenesis. The next term that we considered while studying about gametogenesis is homothelic and monoecious. These terms are basically used in the fungi kingdom and the animal kingdom. So whenever we are using studying these fungi and the animal kingdom, the term homothelic and the monoecious means bisexual condition. We have just studied about bisexual condition, where both the gametes are produced by the same body. So monoecious we have studied in the term monoecious we have studied in class 11th also. So homothelic and monoecious in plants and fungi means bisexual condition, whereas heterothelic and the dioecious terms are used to describe the unisexual condition, where the male and the female gametes are produced by the different bodies. Now, if we talk about angiosperms or the flowering plants, again there are two different terms: staminate and pistillate. Staminate terms are used to indicate the flowers which possess stamen, and the pistillate are those flowers which possess the pistil or carpel. Clear? Now, the second step that includes in the pre-fertilization events is gamete transfer. So gamete transfer, as the name is indicating, it involves the transfer of the gametes from male body up to the female body. And this gamete transfer in case of the plants includes pollination. You have studied in previous classes, in lower classes, that pollination is a cross specialized event which facilitates transfer of the pollen grains from anther to the stigma. And if we talk about animal kingdom, the gamete transfer takes place by the copulation. Clear? Now let's talk about that which type of the cell division takes place when we are talking about the formation of the gametes. So cell division during gamete formation is mainly meiosis, because gametes are haploid, and from the body which they are forming, it is a diploid body. So mainly the meiosis division takes place during the formation of the gametes. But what happens when the parent body is also haploid? So when the haploid parent produce gametes, it will produce by the mitotic division. Now the second phase of the events in sexual reproduction is fertilization. So fertilization is the process of fusion of the male and the female gametes, and it is the most vital event of the sexual reproduction. And the term that we use for the fusion of the gamete is syngamy, which results in the formation of a diploid zygote. Zygote is always diploid, which is having a two haploid set of the chromosomes. Now a question that arises here is, what happens if syngamy do not takes place? If syngamy do not takes place, then there is a phenomenon which is called as parthenogenesis which takes place. And parthenogenesis means the development of the new organisms without undergoing fertilization. And the best example of parthenogenesis in nature are honeybees. Honeybees produce two type of the organisms. The female organisms, the female honeybees or the female organisms of these honeybees, they are produced by the process of syngamy or fertilization. When the male gamete fuses with the female gamete, the resultant is a diploid females. But the males of their colonies, they are produced by parthenogenesis. Some eggs of the honeybees, and obviously egg is a female gamete, so it is going to be haploid. So some eggs develop directly into a new individual, and that is a male. And such individuals, due to the lack of another set of the chromosome, they are haploid. Clear? So this is parthenogenesis. And now the next question that the other organisms that can exhibit parthenogenesis are rotifers, even some lizards and some birds like turkey. Now the next question that arises is, where does syngamy occurs? The fusion of the gametes takes place in various conditions, and on the basis of that there are types of fertilization. Like the first category is external fertilization. External fertilization means when the male and the female gamete are fusing outside the body of the female, and this type of gametic fusion is called as external fertilization. And it takes place in majority of algae and fishes as well as amphibians, where the syngamy has a medium like water, and this is called as external fertilization. But the most important thing that need to be taken care during the external fertilization is synchronization between the sexes and their release of the gametes into the surrounding water. And this is necessary to enhance the chances of the syngamy, because if the males are producing the sperms during a different time interval, and females are producing gametes in a quite different time of interval, then there will be no fertilization or fusion. So there it needs to show a great synchronization between the release of the gametes. Now the next type of the fertilization is internal fertilization. Now, internal fertilization means when the sperms are introduced into the body of the female organism and the egg is formed inside the female body where they fuse with the male gamete, and in the organism exhibiting this internal fertilization, the male gamete is obviously motile and it reach the egg in order to fuse with it. And a significant example is mammals, and in case of seed plants also. So this is about fertilization. Now the last phase of sexual reproduction is post fertilization development. So all the development that is taking after the syngamy or fusion of gamete is called as post fertilization development. So the very first event in post fertilization development is the zygote formation. Whenever the male and female gamete used to fuse, they produce a diploid zygote, which is universal in all sexually reproducing organism. In organism with external fertilization, the zygote is formed outside the body in external medium, whereas in the organism which exhibit internal fertilization, the zygote is formed inside the body of the female. So after the zygote formation, the next event is embryogenesis, because that embryo is also going to develop into a new individual. So embryogenesis refers to the process of development of embryo from the zygote. Whenever a zygote develops into embryo, it is known as embryogenesis. And during the embryogenesis, the zygote undergo a number of cell division, repeated cell division, and the cell division that will be followed is mitosis, that is equational division. And after the cell division, the cells differentiate to form the different type of the tissues, organs, and organ systems. And the embryogenesis, at the end of the embryogenesis, a new individual is formed. So that's about the events in the sexual reproduction. If we talk about the flowering plants, then zygote is formed inside the structure which is known as ovule. In class 11th we have studied about ovule. So in flowering plants, the zygote is formed inside the ovule, and just after fertilization, the non-reproductive structures like the sepals, the petals, and even the stamen, the reproductive part, that is stamen, they wither off and fall off, and the pistil, it remain attached to the plant, and the zygote develops into embryo and ovule develop into the seed. And we have also studied that ovary will modify it into a fruit, and it develops a thick wall, a fruit wall, which is known as fruit wall, which biologically known as pericarp, which is having a protective function. So that's about the events in the sexual reproduction. So at last, the main assignment that we are going to quote in the sexual reproduction is, this completes your first chapter, that is reproduction in organisms. Now the assignment related to this chapter, the main assignments questions are, the very first question, the very most important question is how meiosis and gametogenesis are linked. This is the main question that arises from this chapter, and I hope you can easily answer this question. That how meiotic cell division or meiosis and gametogenesis interlinked. Now the second assignment question that arises from this chapter is the differentiation between a zoo spore and a zygote. So these two are different structures, so you need to differentiate between zoo spore and a zygote. And the third important assignment question from this chapter is the that why offsprings of the oviparous animals are at greater risk as comparison to the offsprings of viviparous animals. So this is also a very important question, that why offsprings offsprings of oviparous animals are at greater risk than viviparous animals. So these are your assignment question, and this completes your first chapter, that is reproduction in organisms.